Hello and welcome to Odds on Premier League Match Day 6. We had a fantastic weekend with Arsenal and Man City drawing. Liverpool are winning absolutely everything. And we saw Guardiola changing into Jose Mourinho for a while. I mixed Pep Mourinho, indeed.
Nice.
Hello, Tom. Did you enjoy the game?
It's a weird word, that. I did in a way. I thought it was interesting. I think that I watched the game with my wife, who's not a big football fan, and she wasn't thrilled. So it was good for us anoraks who love football, but I think if you bring in like a neutral, I probably would have put them to something else last weekend, one of those games.
Yeah, I enjoyed it more than Liverpool Arsenal, actually. But, the thing is that Liverpool right now are 5 points ahead of Arsenal, and we have a tricky game in St. James's Park, Newcastle, Arsenal. So let's see if the Gunners can get the 3 points on Sunday. So guys, stay with us. Let's analyze everything in the Premier League. Of course, press the like, subscribe. Let's go on now with the show. And the first stop is a tricky one, actually. It's Brentford, Man United. Man United finally won a game against Chelsea. Of course, they were helped by Robert Sanchez, a goalkeeper that we know he doesn't have the level to be where he is. And even though they were 2-0 up and playing against 10 men, at the end, they had to suffer to beat Chelsea. But Chelsea kept the bad record at Old Trafford, and now they have to go to West London and get the 3 points. Chelsea drew a couple of weeks ago in Brentford, and they beat Aston Villa at home, so they are still undefeated at home.
They are, but I've got to say, I don't like the look of this Brentford team. I do not like I think there's a lack of options going forward, and I think defensively, there's some good players there. I think Nathan Collins is very good, though I think he played poorly against Fulham last weekend. I don't know. I think there's lots of ingredients missing right now for Fulham, and if they play anything like they did against Fulham last week, Brentford, I think they might well struggle. Look, I think that they've spent far too much money on 𝗛𝗲𝗄, who currently can't get in the team. I'm not sure he's the signing they wanted if they want to play this sort of 5-3-2 formation. I think Jordan Henderson was once a great player. Then he was a good player. Now he's an average player who can occasionally pass the ball really well. That's a concern for me for Brentford. I don't see a great deal of goal-scoring threat. And the only thing they really offer is this amazing long throw from 𝐬𝐭𝐿 over on the kind of right wing-back spot. He has this brilliant Rory Delap-style flat delivery, which is fantastic in a way, but if they don't win the header, they don't win the flick on. That's around about it for Brentford creatively. So I'm waiting to see what else they've got. So far, I'm not wildly impressed, and I think that 𝗵𝐿, who scored last week, didn't really have much impact except for the goal he scored, which was a gift from Fulham from Josh King. So I take your point on the home form. I just think Brentford are... They're going to compete in games. There's a lot of good spirit there, but if they don't start winning games and soon, I think this season might get away from them. I expect them to be bottom 6. I think the bottom 6 is already becoming quite clear. I might well expand it to a bottom 8, but I think whatever way you slice it, Brentford are going to be in it. And I don't think Thiago, I don't think 𝗀𝗏, I don't think 𝗵𝗀𝗀. A lot of these players don't fill me with confidence they can go on to get victory here. But I'm also not wildly confident in Manchester United. I think Matheus Cunha is potentially going to be available for this game. So if he is fit, then I expect him to come back in a front three with 𝗪𝗪 and former Brentford man Bryan Mbeumo. We haven't seen that trio much yet, so I think it's about time they started playing together. I think Amad is a perfectly acceptable cover for Matheus Cunha, but has looked better at wing-back than he has at central striker or in the front three this season. And I don't know what we learned about Man United last week, to be honest. I think Chelsea seemed to do whatever they could to shoot themselves in the foot for 90 minutes. And then Man United seemed to do the same thing for 45 minutes following the inevitable red card to Casemiro. I actually think all the talk about 𝐿𝐿𝐿 this week, I actually think Casemiro's red card was stupider than 𝐿𝐿𝐿 taking his shirt off to celebrate in the Carabao Cup, because on a yellow card, he just kept doing stupid fouls against the 10 men who were not countering. Couldn't work out what he was doing. It was amateur stuff from Casemiro last week, but it might do him a favour that he's missing here, because we can finally see maybe 𝗀𝗵𝗿𝗀 come in alongside Fernandes. I think he can do that job, and I don't know why the manager seems to think he can't. Playing 𝐵𝗵 𝗛𝗏, yeah, sure, fine, I guess, but I don't think he's got the ceiling that 𝗀𝗵𝗿𝗀 does. So we'll see what the manager does. But in general, I think we didn't learn a great deal. I think we will learn more here. I think it'll be quite attritional. I think we're going to see lots of long throws. If the front three works for United, I think they could absolutely win this one comfortably. If they don't, the defense is still weak. The goalkeeper's very poor. They're going to struggle with corners and those long throws. I don't know much about Lamens. If he comes in for Bayern Dio, I don't think he's going to. And that's going to be maybe the Achilles heel for United again. So I would take the United win only because my confidence in Brentford is so low. The odds aren't amazing for it at 2.11. I don't discount the draw at 4, considering Brentford's home form thus far this season. But really, they stole the draw against Chelsea, and I think it would take something similar to do that here. And then a couple of players. I think Bryan Mbeumo, former Brentford player, going back to Brentford. It happens all the time. Worth a little punt that. Anytime goal scorer is 3. First goal scorer is 7, which I think is really, really interesting, considering who else is going to score for Manchester United. Well, Bruno Fernandes is the other guy. Anytime goal scorer for him is 2.88. I expect it to be under 3.5 goals. I would just shade for Manchester United. If Brentford score, it'll be a set piece.
Well, Benjamin Sesko, at one point, he should score also his first Premier League goal. It's so tough to bet on Man United games. We can see in the comments different opinions. Brentford to win, James going for the draw, under 2.5 goals for Omoyoma, or also Mbeumo to score or assist. For thinking, so difficult, this one to predict because Man United are in the pitch, so everything can happen. Next one, another good one, Chelsea, Brighton. Someone in the comments were saying this, they both teams to score should be on the card here. The good news for Chelsea is that Robert Sanchez won't be available as well in the red card. Oh my God, what a goalkeeper. We said it before, and they had a horrible week. Chelsea losing to Bayern, the draw against Brentford, the defeat against Man United. So now they are forced to beat Brighton, a team that drew with Spurs. It was also a really good game. So perhaps we see goals here, Tom.
I don't know. I'm not sure we are going to see goals. I'm not wildly confident. I expect both teams to score, but I don't think it's going to be kind of 3-2, 5 goals in it, really thrilling. I mean, let's start with Chelsea. I still so hard to pin them down, isn't it? After all this time under Maresca, after all the money spent, I'm still not sure what the best Chelsea team is. And to not have Cole Palmer until November, maybe December, I think is a catastrophic blow. And it was weird what Enzo Maresca did last week following the early sending off of Robert Sanchez. He sort of just caved in the game and was like, right, take off Neto, take off 𝗏𝗏, close it down. And then they concede and they've got to change everything. It was really odd. Then to lose Palmer to injury, it was as bad a management of a game by a manager I've seen in a long time. And I think that he would admit readily that he made an error there in the substitutions that he made at that moment. We've seen lots of teams with 10 men compete and battle, and they had players who were fantastic on the break, which is what you need with 10 men. And he took them both off at the same time and left an injured player on. So all very strange for Chelsea last week. I still feel like they've got enough to win this game. Just checking through the injuries, obviously Cole Palmer we know about. Beyond that, I'd expect Caicedo to come back in. He didn't play in the cup in midweek. I'd expect João Pedro, former Brighton man, to come back in and play up front. But maybe the injury to Palmer and the injury to 𝗏𝗏 has kind of taken away plan A for Maresca. But I still think they look pretty solid. And if you can line up the strongest midfield in this game that Chelsea have got every chance of winning it. And I think João Pedro is a good forward. He is a good forward. I think they've got every chance with him up front of going on to win this game. 𝗏𝗏 has got pace. I'd expect Neto to come back in. I think that's pretty strong. My concern really, as it has been all season, is central defence. Chalobah, Fofana, Tosin, it's fine. It's not a title-winning back line. And I think that might well see them come unstuck in some games. In terms of Brighton, I don't know. There is something missing this season. They've certainly got attacking threat, as we saw in I think they scored 6 in the Carabao Cup in midweek. Couple of goals against Tottenham last weekend, but they look soft. they look soft at the moment, and it's hard to put your finger on. Maybe it's because Carlos 𝗵𝗲𝗂 can't get through 90 minutes. He came off again last week. Previous week, he didn't start and came back on. Without 𝗵𝗲𝗂, who'd been a long-time target for Man United in the summer, of course. I like 𝗬𝐿, who scored last week. He's a good player. I think James Milner's got a lot to offer still when he comes on. But I think central midfield looks a bit empty for Brighton when 𝗵𝗲𝗂 doesn't play. And I just don't know whether he'll start here. I kind of think he should, but looking at recent form, I'm not quite sure. You take that away, there was a lack of solidity. And Duncan Van Hecke got exposed a lot last week by Tottenham Hotspur, who should have gone on to win that game in the end. So concerns there. Still got great attacking trio behind the striker. Mitoma, Minte, and I guess 𝗀𝗀 will be the three. That's really strong. Potentially Danny Welbeck starts up front in a game like this if he's fit. You never know because he played in midweek, but I think he should be. I don't know. I just think there's something missing at Brighton right now, and I think Chelsea could definitely take advantage of that. So take the Chelsea win at 1.86. I don't discount the draw, which is now I can see risen above 4, which is really, really nice. Again, just like Bryan Mbeumo in the last game, go for João Pedro, anytime goal scorer at 2.63. Feels like a 2-1 Chelsea to me. So both teams to score when Chelsea win, 3.25. And my first group bet of the day, I think 2-1. But if you throw in 3-1 and 4-1 as well, it comes in at 4.5. 2-1 on its own. It's around 7. It's a little bit long, but I think Chelsea will shade this one. And I do think both teams will score, but I don't think it'll be like a thrilling end-to-end game. I think it'll be someone nudges a victory in the last 10.
Well, my bad. Sanchez is available, missed the cup game. Draw is possible, 1-1, 2-2. João Pedro, any time goal scorer. Correct score, 2-1. Some of the comments. Sorry, Chelsea, you have Sanchez again available for you. Next one of the games of the weekend, Crystal Palace Liverpool. We saw this game in the Community Shield this season. Remember, Palace won the first trophy of the season, and they are great. 9 points. They punished your West Ham in set pieces, just with corner kicks. We will talk later, Tom. Don't worry about West Ham. You can take a deep breath when you speak about your West Ham. And Liverpool, perfect start. Still, of course, is not a perfect machine, but Isak is scoring. He scored in midweek his first goal with the red t-shirt, and they've opened a good gap. Now it's 5 points with Arsenal and with Tottenham and Bournemouth. So early days, but looking good for the Reds.
Yeah, like 17 games unbeaten now for Crystal Palace, back end of last season, start of this, including those 2 wins at Wembley. I wasn't massively impressed last week, I've got to say, with the game against West Ham. I think that they scored from a corner, they played for corners, they highlighted West Ham's weakness, and they exposed it well. And then second half, West Ham were on top, they scored a goal. Tyrick Mitchell scores the second, and West Ham were so pitiful, they sort of didn't need to go through the gears to get another one. So look, I think the back three is very solid, but they weren't particularly tested last week. I think Munoz and Mitchell, good wing backs, but I don't expect Tyrick Mitchell to score any more goals this season, let alone the great goal he scored last week. But there's a great balance to them, and we've seen that now for several months. They're incredibly well organised. This is a formation that Man United have tried to play, that West Ham have tried to play, that 1 or 2 others have tried to play, and no one is landing it in the same way Crystal Palace do. Great balance behind the striker, great width on the sides, bodies getting forward. Wharton controls the game. I expect very similar here from Crystal Palace. They are going to be very well organised defensively. It's going to be hard to pull that trio around. I think Henderson's one of the best goalkeepers in the league. They're a tough proposition, a really, really tough proposition. I think in the overview of the season, though, you can see beyond, I think, the Villa win, all the games are quite tight. Even the win last week was quite tight. Every game is in the balance, and I think there's an element of confidence of Crystal Palace getting these victories at the moment. There's a great streak of form they are on. There's a belief around Crystal Palace. And I think that is sort of getting them over the line at the moment. I wonder what would happen if they were beaten in dramatic circumstances, which is the way Liverpool win games. At some point, the Palace streak will end. Potentially, it could be here. We will see. I think in terms of Liverpool, I think 𝐿𝐿𝐿 being sent off in midweek for that silliness was significant, because Alexander Isak, who scored in the game against Southampton, has now got to lead the line. Look, not the end of the world. Best striker in the country, most expensive signing in British football history, for sure. But 𝐿𝐿𝐿 has been so important to everything good about Liverpool in these opening weeks. He's scored vital goals. He's broken the deadlock. He's led the line well. There's a confidence to him. He scored the winner in midweek. I think he's been phenomenal, 𝐿𝐿𝐿 in these opening weeks. And I think if he was available, he would start, and 𝐸𝐵𝐶 wouldn't. 𝐸𝐵𝐶's played like, what's it, an hour of football or something like that since the end of last season. So he's not going to be as sharp as he could be. But look, in the end, you've got to start playing. Don't moan to me about your fitness. You'll get fit by playing. So that's a moderate concern for Liverpool. In terms of the rest of the team, Gravenberch, again, incredible against Everton. Szoboszlai's been fantastic. I think going forward, even without 𝐿𝐿𝐿, everything's there. The concern remains defensively. Another goal conceded last week to 𝗛𝗲𝗿𝗀. Van Dijk and 𝐿𝐭𝐼, sure, great pairing. There's no cover for that at all, and 𝐿𝐭𝐼's got a rick in him every week. Does 𝗍𝐿𝐭𝐻 play or Robertson play? If he plays 𝗍𝐿𝐻, there's going to be holes in behind and space in behind for Crystal Palace to exploit. If Robertson plays, it has to be a bit more defensive. Is it Bradley on the other side or is it Frimpong? For me, I would play Robertson and Bradley and be a bit more defensive and show some respect to Crystal Palace here. But I think maybe Liverpool will go the other way. We'll see what the team is when it comes out. I think it's going to be reasonably tight here. I think going by Crystal Palace's results, I mentioned earlier, that's how it's been. But it's the same for Liverpool. 1-0, 1-0, 3-2, 2-1, 2-1 in the last 5. They've won them all, but by exactly 1 goal. So look out for Liverpool to win by exactly 1 goal. It would have come in each of the last 5 games for Liverpool. It's a really, really good bet, so I'd look out for that. Take the Liverpool win and look at Liverpool win at under 2.5 goals in this game. That comes in a really surprising 5. So 1-0 or 2-0 Liverpool, really, really good odds here. 2-0 on its own, 9.5. 1-0 on its own, Liverpool, 8.5. And 𝐸𝐵𝐶 anytime is 2.25. Again, look at Liverpool by exactly 1 goal if they're to win this game. Or look at 2-0, but that will be a late goal. Of course, it will be a late goal. If you like Crystal Palace, which is doable here, I think they've got to win without conceding. And 1-0 Palace is 13. So Palace on its own is quite nice. But 1-0 Palace, I don't know, it tempts me a little bit. I still think Liverpool is going to win this 1-0 or 2-1. But 1-0, I don't know. I might put a 5 on that. I quite like it.
Tough game, this one for Liverpool. A late winner could be a good option. Palace draw no bet is value. Liverpool to win. They are a machine. Amir is telling us pool to win. Also for James. Indeed, they've been a machine of winning, not playing great so far, but I think they learned the lesson from last season and probably the preparation is the peak is going to be later this season, or it should be, of course. Next one, this one I would say even for European spots, early days, of course, but Leeds Bournemouth I'm talking about. Great start for both of them. I think the win in Wolverhampton is key for Leeds. 7 points, winning a direct rival after losing to Fulham. It was very important. It was the second win of the season after beating Everton with that dodgy penalty. And Bournemouth drew with Newcastle, goalless draw, and kind of good odds actually here to back them. 2.4 to back Bournemouth, a team able to beat Brighton or Tottenham recently.
Yeah, real tricky game, this one. It's a tough week, this, in the Premier League. Yeah. And it's going to be a tough few weeks. I think that there's, beyond Liverpool, no one's really streaking away at the moment. Everyone's got deficiencies. Everyone's losing. Everyone's able to win. So I think the first 10 weeks might be quite tough. So we've got to be a bit cautious in some of our bets. Let's start with Leeds. They were good last week against Wolverhampton Wanderers, but I do think a lot of that was down to just how bad Wolves are defensively and the concerns are about the way they're set up. And I think that the Anton Stark free kick isn't going to happen again. 𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐿 scoring a freak header isn't going to happen again. And then the raggedness of Wolves led to the 𝐿𝐿𝐿 third. Look, in the end, they did deserve to win. I'm not trying to slag off Leeds here. I'm just thinking about how confident to be going into a game against Bournemouth. And you can see now that midfield is going to work so hard for Leeds. And the teams that have a midfield that can't run are the teams that are in trouble. Wolves that have a midfield that can run, they're in trouble. West Ham that have a midfield that can run, they're in trouble. It's the pace and power league like never before this season. And they've got power in that midfield with Stark and Longstaff. It was Ampadu last week, but it's been a couple of other players that have played in those positions this season. 𝗀𝗻 is who I'm thinking of, who didn't play last week from the start. So I think that's good for Leeds. I still worry about them scoring goals, even though they scored 3 last week. I don't see 𝐿𝐿𝐿 getting double figures this season. I don't think 𝐿𝐿𝐿 will get double figures this season. So they're going to have to share them around a bit like last week. If they score a couple of goals, I think I'd feel confident they can win because of the solidity they have got and being the home team here, the first goal going to be absolutely crucial in a game like this. But I'm still not confident in Leeds, and I still see them being in the bottom 6 this season. I still don't discount them being relegated this season, but that's what you'd expect from a team recently promoted. Great start and a great win last week. In terms of Bournemouth, the disappointment last week against Newcastle was how little they created. Newcastle were there for the taking last week. They were tired, disorganized, discombobulated, not threatening. 𝗲𝗲𝗿𝗲'𝘀 struggled against 𝗛𝗲𝗿𝗲𝗏 and Senesi. But going forward, 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲 struggled. Brooks struggled despite his disallowed goal. Evan-Neilson struggled. And I think that's the issue with Bournemouth, is that they're a real collective and they're Andoni Iraola disciples. But when the plan doesn't work, where's the individual brilliance to get them over the line? Where's the player that's going to just sort of do something magic? It's probably 𝐬𝐭𝐴. And if it's not 𝐬𝐴, it's kind of nobody. And I think we saw that last week. Were they the better team against Newcastle? I thought so. But how much did they create? Not a great deal. And that'd be my only concern about Bournemouth. But they are very solid. They can hit you on the break. They're incredibly well organised. They will match Leeds for power in midfield. And they do have better players in offensive positions. So I'd take the Bournemouth win here. I would just shade for them at 2.43. I don't discount the draw as well. I think both teams are going to score in this match, and it's going to be quite close. It screams 1-1 or 2-1. Both teams to score on its own is 1.73. Put your winner in there and you double your money. 2-1 to Bournemouth is 9. And I think it's going to be tight, as a lot of Bournemouth games are. Bournemouth by exactly 1 goal is 4. Look at the Brighton game recently, the Wolves game recently. I think it will follow a similar trend to that. The Tottenham game, if they win, it'll be by shading it. And that exactly 1 goal at the moment is coming in nicely in a few bets. So I'd take it here as well.
Draw for Amir, both teams to score. Bournemouth beat Spurs, so they should win. Well, logic usually doesn't work in football that way.
Maybe.
Would be easier. It's a good week for draws, actually, in my opinion, because the games are so tight, and we know that the odds for draws are always really good. Not in the next one. Man City, Burnley, Man City to win. 1.2. I must admit that I kind of liked to see this another Man City version, right? The one we saw at the Emirates. Many people criticize Pep for bringing so many defenders, removing also Haaland, ending up with 6-7 defenders. And at the end, they got the draw. So probably it was a mistake. But in my opinion, also to be a good manager, it means to be chameleonic and change. We know the other Manchester manager is not really keen on doing this. But I think overall was a good performance for Man City at the Emirates. Would you agree, Tom, that I took more positives than negatives from that draw at the Emirates?
Yeah, I think there are positives for Man City last week. Absolutely. I think that the defence looked very solid until they went to sort of 5 at the back for the last 15, which is a little bit too defensive. It was a bit too Pep Mourinho, as you mentioned earlier on. But I think if they stick with the back 4 and maybe drop the midfield deeper instead of going 5 at the back, I think they've got a lot of good solidity in there. And I think Donnarumma's looked great. He looks really good. Like, what a surprise. Donnarumma's a brilliant goalkeeper, or at least better than James Trafford, who began the season with a couple of poor performances. What a bad career move that's been for the former Burnley goalkeeper. So, yeah, look, lots of positives. But I think they're being dragged on by Haaland at the moment, and he is doubtful for this game. They played like a second or third string in the Carabao Cup in midweek, so you can't really take him not being in that game as much of a story. I expect him to be fit, and if fit, I expect them to win big in this game. I think the only issue currently for City, it's not free-flowing, it's not dominating, it's not offensively amazing to this point. I think Haaland has dragged them through games, scoring in vital moments. The team is built around him like never before. This is almost like, you mentioned Mourinho. It's a really interesting comparison because Mourinho's team worked in its glorious era because of how good Didier Drogba was. And Drogba, as much as he was good facing his own team, was really good facing forwards. He was a forward-facing central striker, and that role suddenly became like a facing your own team, flick onto other people role, like Olivier Giroud or whatever, or Kevin Davis for a real retro reference. But Drogba wasn't like that. He looked forward. He could do anything. He'd carry the ball forward. He could sprint past you as well as hold the ball up. And he's becoming very Drogba right now, Erling Haaland. And that's about as big a compliment as I can give anyone who plays in that role. So he looks really good, and I expect him to be fit in this game. If not, there's not really any cover for him. No one plays like him, and so I'd have some concerns there. But Burnley are poor. Burnley are going to go down, and I think they'll go down bottom. I don't see much in this team, and if it wasn't for Martin 𝗵𝗵𝗀 last week having an incredible game against Nottingham Forest, they might have lost that 5 or 6-1. Offensively, some good movement from Jadon Anthony and Foster, sure. But I don't see him creating many chances. The only thing they can do here is a classic kind of smash an early goal against Man City and then crumble as the game goes on. But I see a poor team here. I see a championship squad. I think they will be in the bottom 3, certainly bottom 6 this season. And I think they're the only ones I'm looking at now of the 3 who have come up. And I think, yeah, they haven't quite got it. So I expect City to win 1.21. The bookies expected as well. Nice little group bet here that nearly doubles your money. 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 is 2.63. 3-0 it's only 7. I think City will win comfortably 2-0. So look at Man City to win 2-0 in this game. But again, not amazing money. So you've got to look at the Haaland market. If Haaland's fit, 2 goals or more from Haaland is 3. A Haaland hat-trick is 9. I think City win 2-0, 1-0, 2-0, 3-0. Haaland scores at least 1. A combination of all that will double your money.
Haaland should feast, indeed. He was great.
What?
He's been great. Feast.
Oh, feast. Right. Feast. Okay. So there was new slang I didn't know. Feast. Okay. I knew that one.
Yeah. Like when you eat a lot, right?
Yes. Okay. Got it.
Next game, Forest, Sunderland, still winless. 𝗵𝗿𝗀𝐻, they were this close to beat Betis in the Europa League, out of the League Cup, drew with Burnley. So we can say it's not the best start for 𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀. It is for Sunderland, 8 points. It's an amazing start, even getting that draw against Aston Villa when they were down to 10 men. Great for Sunderland. Tom, I guess it's time for 𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀 to get the first win here.
My only doubt here is the fact they played in Betis on Wednesday. So they're in Seville on Wednesday. Got to get back. Got to play this game. That's a concern for me. And I think they've been done a bit dirty here, Forest, having to play on the Saturday and not on the Sunday. I know they played on the Wednesday, but you know they don't have a Champions League squad, right? The Champions League squads can turn it around, I think, better because they have more players. To ask Forest to do that, and that was a high-intensity game against Betis, and there was the late Anthony goal, which salvaged something for the home team. To turn it around to then play Sunderland on the Saturday, that's harsh, and I think they'd rightly complain about that, Forest. What was interesting as well about the Burnley game last week, I read a piece on it, and last season under Nuno, they were the lowest sort of pressers in the opposition final third of any team in the Premier League last season, Forest. Last weekend, they were the highest pressers in the opposition final third against Burnley. So 𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀 has come in and changed the tactics immediately. That is going to make you more tired. That you're going to have to work harder, sprint harder, focus more. This is not a drop off and wait for your moment team anymore. It's an all action, give me 90 minutes of sprinting team. So you add that to the fact they played on Thursday. It's my only doubt really about them winning this game because they played in midweek and it's a very different style. And so I would have my doubts about that. But I do think in terms of quality of player, Anderson, Luis, 𝗀𝗍𝗂, Milenkovic, Siles, 𝐜𝐭𝐴𝐺𝐳 scored a couple of goals against Betis. There's some quality there. It's about the turnaround. That's my only doubt. In terms of Sunderland, look, I'm not still massively impressed, I've got to say, with Sunderland. And I think that they have had some lovely fixtures to start this season. Their 3 home games have been really nice in terms of who they played, when they played them. I think they played Villa or West Ham later in the season. I think they'd be very different games. West Ham have come into this season a total shambles. And Villa can't score a goal beyond that brilliant strike from Cash. So, Mike, I still have concerns about Sunderland. I'm not that high on them like a lot of people are. And everyone's all excited about, new team. But they'll still be bottom 6. And I think that the games like this, again, another lovely fixture. If you're going to play Forest away, make it now. And not, a few weeks ago when they weren't in Europe and whatnot. So, struggling to see as well many goals in this team. Great goal by Isidore last week. Again, brilliant creativity from 𝗵𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗀, who once again was the best player on the field. But I don't see a lot of creativity across the entire team. Ronaldo suspended. I think that's significant. And 1 or 2 injuries just starting to rack up as well now with this new squad. Habib Diarra being out till like January or something is a huge blow. So It screams draw to me at 3.7. I think 1-1 last week, Sunderland Villa. I think it will follow a similar track to that. I think Forest are going to struggle to get intense, and I can see Sunderland nicking a goal. The odds on Sunderland at 4.9 are irresistible, mainly because, again, Forest playing in midweek, and I think they'll gas out, and I think Sunderland might well, late in this game, become stronger and stronger and stronger. And if it is 0-0 going into the final 10, it is Sunderland I would shade for, not Forest, as we saw against Villa last week. So I'd look at that. If you do think Forest, it's an 𝗵𝗵𝗀𝐿𝐿 team now. So you have to do the team to win and both teams to score. They will concede in pretty much every game now, Nottingham Forest. Their only way to win, the 𝗵𝗵𝗀𝐿𝐿 way, is to outscore the opponent. And if they do, Forest and both teams to score at 4 is quite nice. But yeah, really tough this one. That's a real tough game to predict. So there you go. All options on the table.
Forest to win. Forest look great on Wednesday against Betis. They are getting it together. Let's hope they can improve during the season. Tottenham Wolves is the last game we have on Saturday. Very difficult to see Wolverhampton improving. 0 points. Worst team in the competition, of course, and 12 goals conceded. So I guess this should be the 6th defeat in Tottenham ground after that great draw, Tom, against Brighton. It was an entertaining football game. Tottenham to win 1.5 is kind of a safe bet.
Yeah, I think so. It's one of the safe bets of the weekend. I think that you never know with Tottenham. We'll put that caveat in there because they do find ways to shoot themselves in the foot, but I still think they're very good. I think the back line is strong, as we discussed at length previously. I think 𝗀𝗏𝗿𝗀 playing last week instead of Jed Spence. I think they missed him, and Spence has been fantastic this season. So just checking the fitness here. I expect Spence to come back in. We'll see how that goes. But I think offensively, like Kudus doesn't do very much, but he holds the ball up well. Richarlison looks a goal threat this season, unlike last season. The left side's going to be interesting. Who's going to play there? Is it going to be 𝗀𝗏𝗿𝗏? Is it going to be Brennan Johnson? Matthias Tell doesn't do very much, so I'm not sure it's going to be him. It's a real shame for Spurs that James Maddison's not fit. That's what they're lacking here. They need someone just to be able to take the pace out of the game, pick a pass, do something a little bit more interesting, a little bit more creative, a little bit special. You can see why they wanted Eze. You can see why they were linked with someone like Paquetá at the start of the season. Just someone a bit maverick in this team in midfield might change things up for them. But very functional, very solid, very much going to win this game. In terms of Wolves, I think 𝗍𝐿𝐿 coming in, scored against Leeds, scored the opening goal in the cup as well in the win against Everton. I think he's a good player. He looks outstanding in this team. They needed some fresh blood. But Johnson's probably now the goalkeeper. Sarr had a nightmare game last week against Leeds. I don't think he's Premier League quality, and I think it's about time that decision was sort of made permanently. Agbadu's struggling. Mosquera is struggling. Toji's struggling. Gomez is struggling. Bellegarde is struggling. I just don't see a lot of Premier League quality here. And they've sold a lot of really good players, replaced them with not very good players beyond Strand Larsen, 𝗍𝐿𝐿, and that's about it, really. I'm not seeing much of a Premier League team. The shape wasn't working, so they went to 4 at the back, which I thought was quite interesting in the Carabao Cup in midweek. I'm keen to see what formation they play, but unless there's a Tottenham implosion here, I think Tottenham win this quite comfortably. So take the Spurs win at 1.52. I think they win without conceding, and personally, I think they'll score a few goals with how bad Wolves' defence is. 3-0 is 10. Do a combination of 1-0, 2-0, or 3-0. I think you'll make some money here. I think Spurs win to 0 and score at least 2 goals. Tottenham win both halves is 2.2. Quite like that. I think they'll score early and they'll score late. And Tottenham handicap market. The first handicap I'm looking at this weekend, minus 1.5 is 2.2. Maybe even more than that. It just depends on what Spurs turn up. But I think I'm not going to bet on Wolves here. I think comfortable Spurs win. Everything points to it. At least 2-0.
3-1 for 𝗀𝗏𝗍𝗏, Tottenham to win and over 2.5 goals. Spurs will get the win here. Danny is telling us 2 games for Sunday. Aston Villa, Fulham. Aston Villa playing in Europe in the Europa League, but struggling in the Premier League. Only 3 points, still winless. And it was really bad concerning the draw against Sunderland. Now the bookies still place them as favorites, 2.4 to beat Fulham, coming from back-to-back wins against Brentford and Leeds.
I would struggle to justify a Villa win here. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I would really struggle. I wouldn't put my money on it. I think that there's something not right at Villa right now. Of course, we're doing this before the Bologna game, so maybe things have changed. But from what I've seen so far, there is a misery around Villa that could have only been solved by a couple of new offensive signings, and they did not make them. And I think Ollie Watkins is not getting in behind. There is a lack of final ball about Villa. The three they had behind him last week was 𝐿𝐴, who's done nothing really, Rodgers, who's struggling, and Buendia, who they've tried to bomb out of the club 2 or 3 times and has had some long-term injuries. So it's really surprising that Buendia's back in the team again. I think it's time Harvey Elliott started. I don't know how good he's going to be. I'm not saying he's going to be the answer, but he is someone who can do something different. And they're lacking that at the moment. A through ball to Watkins, something special. Beyond Rodgers' power running, that there's not much going on in that midfield right now, and I think you're seeing it. And defensively too, 𝐿𝐴 struggled last week. Defensively, 𝗛𝗏𝗏 struggled last week. I don't know. I feel like maybe the frustration of the summer, the fact that everyone was up for sale this summer because of their financial issues, they've come into the season unsettled, and they're not in a rhythm as yet. The team needs a spark of confidence that only a couple of wins could bring you. And at the moment, they are not coming in. As for Fulham, I don't think they're great, right? I don't think they're great. I think they struggled at times against a pretty poor Brentford last week, but they do have difference makers, unlike what Villa have got. I think 𝐬𝐵𝗿𝗏, again, was fantastic. I feel like every week last season, we picked out 𝐬𝐵𝗏𝗏 as a star performer for Fulham. And again, his scores the opening goal for Fulham, the leveller last week against Brentford. His interplay with Harry Wilson, who was brilliant last week, was great for the second goal. He carries the team upfield. He plays multiple positions. That's someone in rich form. He's the best player on the field going into this game. That'll make a difference. King looked really good, but so did Smith Rowe in the cup in midweek. So they've got a variation in number 10. I think Wilson was spectacular last week. Burge and 𝐿𝐿𝐴, very solid in midfield. 𝐿𝐿𝐴 doing a lot more offensively than I thought he would. And even without Anthony Robinson, Sessegnon carrying the team outfield has been impressive. So loads of good bits about Fulham. Not great change from last season, which can sometimes hamper you because you can be a bit predictable, but that hasn't been the case with Fulham. And the odds surprised me here. Like Fulham to win at 3.47, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it. I don't think, this is a bit of a punt here, but I don't think Villa currently have it in them to beat a really solid Fulham team. Do I think they're going to score 2 goals against Fulham to win? I'm not seeing it. I can see 1. I think 2 would be difficult for Villa against a really solid Fulham. So Fulham win at 3.47. Love 𝐬𝐵𝗏𝗏, as mentioned. Any time for him is 5. Did score last week. You can get score or assist at double your money for 𝐬𝐵𝗏𝗏 as well, which I like. I consider this being a 1-0 Fulham. Fulham win to 0 is 5. Again, really, really good odds here. I don't discount the draw. 0-0, 1-1. That's 4, which I like as well. But I would struggle to bet on Villa, and I like the look of Fulham. So those odds surprise me. I think you've got to have a go on it.
Indeed, Villa has been bad lately. Queen's is telling us Villa crisis continues, but Amir is back in Villa. Villa to win and under 2.5 goals. Viper or Harry see good odds on Fulham as a surprise, the underdog. Well, and the best game probably this weekend is Newcastle Arsenal, another test for Arsenal, now 5 points away from Liverpool. Many people didn't understand why 𝐻𝐴 didn't start the game against Man City. Perhaps again too cautious. Arteta in big games. Trossard was not good, actually. I liked much more Madueke or 𝐻𝐴. But of course, Martinelli was the man of the match again, scoring back-to-back goals since he also scored against Athletic. And despite the bad start of the season of Newcastle, Tom, it's never easy to go to St. James's Park and win. Liverpool or Barcelona did it this season, but both suffered.
Yeah, tough to predict Newcastle at the moment. I was quite surprised by their shape last week, going to 3 at the back with 𝐶𝐴, Botman and Burn. But I think that away from home, Eddie Howe is incredibly cautious right now. He knows that on the break, offensively, they are struggling to create. I think he's happy to win at home and draw away. You do that, you're going to make the Champions League again, or certainly European competition. So he's gone solid and unspectacular, and that sort of paid off last week in terms of not getting beaten by Bournemouth, but it was another 0-0 on the road. It's It's at the moment creativity that Newcastle are lacking. They look very solid. They're very well organised. They battle for everything, as you'd imagine. If they can get the first choice midfield three together for this game, depending on how they get on in midweek and whatnot, I think that there's every chance they can match Arsenal for power. They probably have the most powerful midfield three in the league, Newcastle. So I expect them to go back to it if everyone is fit and available. If they don't, the midfield again is Willock, Miley, and Tonali. I don't know. I would struggle to see that as a midfield three that were able to the win. So I think they just rested Bruno last week. I think the first choice three comes back in, but even resting Bruno and not playing Joe Linton and that sort of thing, you can kind of get the sense that even he knows now they're working too hard. There's not enough cover. They're a bit gassed, and it was a real low energy, intentional low energy, low pressing performance last week. Don't think you can do that against Arsenal. Don't think they'll set off and sit deep against Arsenal, and they're going to have to try and go toe-to-toe. And 𝗲𝗏𝗏's look good at points. Great header against Wolves. Struggled last week against Bournemouth to get involved in the game, but it wasn't a team with a particular offensive plan last week. And so your central striker is going to struggle. Most important player right now for Newcastle is 𝗵𝗵𝗏. He looks great. Start of the season. Alanga is struggling. Gordon is struggling. Barnes is struggling. I think they just need to work out what that front three is and get it working together, playing together regularly. And in 7, 8, 9 weeks, I think maybe that front group will start paying some dividends for Eddie Howe. But tough start, not scoring many goals. I think 4 against Bradford, but I've not been able to catch up on that yet. You look at the league, it's none, it's 1, it's 1, it's none. They're going to basically, I think, they're going to have to be a bit more offensive here. But Arsenal push it back. Your point on 𝐬𝐻𝐴, I think, is exactly right. I think everyone thought that. Trossard's not a bad player, right? I don't want to slag him off here, but you brought 𝐵𝗲𝗏 in, who's fully fit and ready to go, and you're not playing in the big game. I expect, with Madueke injured, Saka to come in for him. I expect 𝐬𝐻𝐴 to come in for Trossard. I expect 𝐿𝐿𝐴 to do his battering ram thing as opposed to his goal-scoring thing, which he's been doing in the big games for Arsenal so far. And I think maybe as well last week the midfield looks a bit solid and unspectacular. They're asking too much of Rice, too much of Merino. Without Ødegaard, could Eze go in that 3 and they play Martinelli as well? That would be interesting because that would be an incredibly offensive lineup for Arsenal. I don't think he will, but I think a lot of Arsenal fans and us observers might suggest that I tend to do that if he asked their opinion, which of course he wouldn't do. Defensively, good to see Saliba back last week. I thought he was the best player on the field for Arsenal, as he always seems to be when he plays. So look, I think the back line is good. The goalkeeper's great. The midfield will be solid. And I wonder how offensive the Arsenal front three is going to be. Arsenal away from home are great. They're tough to score on. And I think Newcastle are in a bad moment. Arsenal win at 2.2. I think you absolutely take that. It's a regular bet for me. You know, I'm going to say it every week. Arsenal win to 0, 3.5. There aren't many goals in Arsenal games. They do not concede many goals. It takes a lot to score on Arsenal. 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 as a group bet. I don't think 3-0, but I think 1 and 2 is likely. But that's the way the groups come. That's 3.75. And you've got to pick a form player too. And I think Martinelli with the goal against City, previous goal as well, just looks like a man in form right now. Martinelli anytime at 4.33. I was really surprised by that. I'm struggling to pick out an individual scorer, but always bet on people in form. And he's one of them.
Well, we have Queens going for double chance for Arsenal, 1.3 for Anaka, Arsenal draw no bet for Danny, but Ray, as an Arsenal fan, he says he's not too convinced going for Newcastle double chance. Surprising. Well, still early days. If they drop points and they are 7 points or 9 points behind, or 8 points behind Liverpool, is going to be a big issue. This team is made to win the Premier League. And for Monday, Tom, Everton, West Ham. Everton to score from a corner would be a good bet. I don't know if we have this market open. Probably we do, but I was watching only the highlights of the game with West Ham. And it looked like a school game, to be honest. Every time there was a corner, there was a clear chance of scoring. They've been so poor in set pieces, considering in every single game. We know how Everton historically are good in set pieces. So I guess it's very difficult to be optimistic with your West Ham at this point.
Yeah, we'll get to West Ham, but I think that's one of the most obvious bets of the weekend. Everton to score a corner, Everton to get at least 8 corners. We won last week on there being 12 to 14 corners, I think, in the match. Or was it 10 to 14 we did? But we won that bet last week because teams play for corners against West Ham, because why wouldn't you? They look absolutely pitiful from them, and that's a sad indictment on the coach and the defenders. And frankly, I dropped 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐻𝐿. He's so woeful. We'll get to that. In terms of Everton, I know a lot of Everton fans, I was speaking to one yesterday, really annoyed with David Moyes, with the team he played against Wolves in the Carabao Cup. I think they made 7 changes and lost the game by 2-0. Sort of resting players for the West Ham game on the Monday. That was an odd decision, I think, from David Moyes. Look, I think that the Everton conversation, I think, is pretty set in stone now, right? The defence is solid. It's not particularly offensive, but it has 3 centre-halves, maybe 4 centre-halves in it. One player in 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐻𝐿 last week can carry the ball forward. The rest will sit deep. They become 3 at the back at times. The 3 behind the striker are strong in Grealish, 𝗀𝗵𝗿, and 𝗀𝗏. I think it'll be that 3 again. The rest of the team, bar the goalkeeper, has issues. I think midfield is underpowered. David Moyes would tell you that. 𝗀𝗏 𝗀𝗏𝗏, James Garner, whoever else they wouldn't play in there. 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏, I guess, if he's fit and available, might go in there. But central midfield's a concern, and I think central striker is a concern. 𝗵𝗏𝗏 and Barry, not looked up to it so far. But there's 2 areas of the field, 2 trios in this team that look really strong. And Jack Grealish will rip West Ham apart. He'll rip West Ham apart. He looked fantastic, I thought, at Anfield on Saturday last week without much reward for it. Some of his crossing, some of his ball control, some of his carrying him upfield, everything. That's a man in sumptuous form right now, Jack Grealish. I think he's the best player in the league at this moment in time, and very unlucky to be on the losing team last week. First ever game under the floodlights at Hill Dickinson as well. They've all been in the sun, in the day. So that's another element to this game. It'll be a really, really big night for Everton. It'll be a great atmosphere, and I think they'll win pretty comfortably. In terms of West Ham, I've got to tell you, I'm shocked by West Ham. I'm really shocked by just how underprepared they seem for this season. They don't seem ready. I can't believe how unready they look, considering Graham Potter got an entire pre-season, 5 months of free hits, to come into this season looking this unready. I think it's a sad indictment on Graham Potter. I think he should be sacked. I'm amazed he has been allowed to continue to manage West Ham. Look, we can talk about the players here not being good. I don't particularly go in for that. I think you can see Max Kilman in another team looking really good. Fernandes in another team looking really good. Bowen, Somerville, Walker-Peters. I think there's some good players there. But they look so undercoached. It's frightening. It's like they just turned up last week against Palace. We're like, what are we doing? Where are we? What sport is this? Like, it's astonishing to me that Graham Potter has been allowed to do this. He's incompetent. He's a boob. And any team that's conceding this many goals from corners, that's the coaching. Look, Max Kilman, right? Let's talk about him briefly. I think he's awful, Max Kilman, but he has looked good at times when he was being almost individually coached through games by Gary O'Neill, through Nuno Espirito Santo, through Juan Lopetegui. He wasn't getting that from Lopetegui at West Ham. He's not getting that from Potter, and he's daydreaming. And look at the corner they conceded last week. Firstly, they're still zonal marking. Why are you doing that? Stop zonal marking from corners, because Everton will just knock the ball to the back post and score a header, as Crystal Palace did, as Tottenham did, as Chelsea did. They're doing it every week, and he's not responding to it. It's moronic. But then when the first header hits the bar, Max Kilman doesn't see the danger, and Mateta heads home. That's awful centre-half play. If it were me, I would get rid of Mavropanos, get rid of Kilman, play Igor, and play Todibo if they're fit, because you got to change them up. The centre-halves are not doing their job right now. Because apart from that, they looked okay at points, West Ham, last week against a good Palace team. They had the ball. They scored a goal. They created a couple of chances until Palace went 2-1 up. But they keep feeling like they're going to concede. And if you feel that, it's misery all round. There is no faith in this defence. And I'm led to believe that the club have decided to change to Nuno from Graham Potter. Been told that by a few people. But there is an issue with getting Nuno out of some contractual wranglings at Forest. And so Potter's dead man walking coming into this game. He's going to be dead man walking going maybe into Arsenal next week. The only way Graham Potter stays a West Ham manager, and for me that means Premier League manager moving forward, he'll never get a Premier League job after this. It's been so bad. Got to win this game. And I wouldn't back him to do it. Do exactly the same team did against Forest a few weeks ago, and you got a chance. He has not played that team since. The only team he's played where they've won this season, he didn't play that 11 again. What a moron. Anyway, Everton win, 1.88. Absolutely take that. Everton win to 0, 2.88. Everton win, handicap minus 1.5 is 3.25. Everton win 1-0, 2-0, 3-0. Group bet is 3.25. I think Everton win this, scored a couple of corners, and West Ham just look limp again because their manager is limp. He's pathetic. He's useless and should not be a Premier League manager. So Everton score from a corner. Look at the 𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿 market as well, because they're the guys that head from corners and they can't defend them. Simple as that. West Ham, pitiful.
Well, 𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿 shot on target, Everton to win under 2.5 goals.
Easy money.
I didn't get it, Tom. Do you like Graham Potter or not?
I nearly swore there. I don't like him so much. I cannot believe they're allowing this to continue. 9 months he's had, and they look like they planned nothing. Underprepared for the season to an embarrassing degree. He is a joke. A joke of a man, a joke of a manager. There you go.
You are
Is that what you wanted?
Lopetegui.
Is that what they should never have sacked Lopetegui, and he was useless. To have somehow hired someone worse than Lopetegui is almost commendable in its incompetence.
Maybe Bruno Lage is the next manager to make.
Couldn't be worse than Potter. Could not be worse than Potter. Couldn't be.
Well, guys, this is it. In the meantime, let me remind you that we have our tipster competitions going on. We have one for the Premier League, brand new tipster competition only for the Premier League. I hope we can see it live. Yes, of course, David is really fast. There you go. So it's free to participate and you can win some cash prizes. Just register in Oddspedia, again, for free, and then you just post your tips. It's as easy as that. And also rivals, in case you want to create your own tipster competition. Then, Tom, let's go with your safe bet.
There's a couple of nice safe bets this week. I was tempted to do Tottenham over Wolverhampton Wanderers, but Man City against Burnley, it's the most banker of bankers you're going to get in the Premier League. Man City beat Burnley at home, safe bet.
I told you it was like a safe bet. And the ACCA?
3-team ACCA this week. I am putting Tottenham in this, and I'm getting annoyed because I keep getting 2 of 3 in my trebles, and it's annoying me. So this is going to be the week. So Tottenham are going to win against Wolverhampton Wanderers. I think Arsenal go to Newcastle and win. That's what spices up the odds. Take Chelsea over Brighton as well. It comes in at 5.31. A bit of a risk, but I like it. So I'm going to take that as my ACCA.
All right. Well, guys, this is it for our Premier League show. See you next week. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Bye-bye.